What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to Axel's Analysis. As always, I'm the man too cheap to make up his own name, so about still one Axel Mulligan. Decent NXT this week. Slight change to the commentary team. We have Philip Saxton and Renee Young this week, and they actually work quite well together. You know, a bit disappointed not to hear Regal's voice because he's the voice of NXT, really. Is what JBL calls him. For once, I actually agree with JBL. But no, there was no William Regal this week, which was a bit of a disappointment. But Renee did a good job, in all fairness to her. You know, I'll give credit where it's due, and it's due here. She did a good job. I think it helps. Like Phillips and Saxton are more experienced than what Rich Brennan, Alex Riley, and Jason Albert are. So maybe that helps Renee sort of work a better show. A lot of people are in a disagreement with me. Got into quite a lot of arguments about it all on Twitter that I don't rate her as a commentator. She did a good job this week, so I'm not gonna knock it if she does a good job. Phillips is good as ever, and if anything, Saxton was the one that pissed me off this week because he's supposed to be a heel commentator, and he just don't know. The last couple of shows that he's done, he's just not been. It's just the same old shit. And you got to keep fresh with your stuff, because otherwise you're just thinking, you said that last week, you said it the week before, you said it the week before that, and it just gets repetitive and boring. So Saxton, I like Saxton. You know, he can work the mic well, but he just needs to freshen himself up a little bit. The first match of the night was Tyler Breeze versus Angelo Dawkins. Breeze's finger is on the mend. It's not fully healed, but it's on the mend. Quick win for Tyler. Hit the beauty shot, and after the match, he threw Dawkins out of the ring, and he shows that on the big screen what he did to Adrian Neville last week, where he sort of took his legs out from underneath him in his main event match. And then afterwards he sort of starts bragging about it, and then he tells us how he wants to show his video. And the crowd popped quite big for it, actually. And he says, well, here you are, here's my video, or whatever he said, I don't remember the exact terminology he used. Here's my video, and out comes Adrian Neville. Neville's walking down to the ring, all suited and booted, and he says, Tyler, nobody wants to see your video. I don't want to see your video. But he asked him when he's going to stop delaying the inevitable and lose to him, like for his championship match. They sort of have a little argument about it all. And Breeze says, oh, hold on a minute. He's holding up his phone like he normally does, and he says, I'm getting a call from the director of The Hobbit, and you're wanted back on set. And the next bit was brilliant, because Adrian Neville turned around and said, well, it's funny you should say that, Tyler, because before I came down here, I received a Snapchat from your mum, and it seems as though you're not the only one in the Breeze family who likes to take a selfie. And I just thought that was fucking brilliant, because Neville's not the greatest on the mic, and everybody knows Neville's not the greatest on the mic. But that was just fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It was just a very quick-witted one-liner. Bam. I love one-liner jokes. I'm a big Tim Vine fan. So anytime I hear somebody come out with a quick one-liner like that, brilliant. So Tyler goes to take a shot at him. Neville ducks it, gets him with a couple of kicks. Breeze bails up the ramp to end the segment. But it was really good. It was something to sort of give you a little teaser, sort of a little taste of when the match is going to be. Well, not when the match is going to be, but to sort of build up a little feud between the two, because there's not been much interaction yet. You know, Tyler's had a week on commentary, but there's not been much face-to-face interaction between the two. So it was good that we had that this week, and hopefully that means that they're sort of building towards it now. Maybe down the in the next couple of weeks, somewhere down the line. Next, we had an interview, and JoJo was doing the interview. I was surprised. I knew she was still hired, but I'm surprised they've actually used her as a backstage interviewer. She was interviewing Natalya, and she asked Natty her opinions on Adam Rose coming back. Adam Rose is advertised for the show. She said she's looking forward to it because he's a fun guy to be around. Tyson Kidd comes in. She can't believe that he says he can't believe that Natalya is buying into the whole Adam Rose thing. She basically tells him to stop being a lemon, have some fun, enjoy life for once. So Tyson says to both of them, go and find Adam Rose, I'm issuing a challenge, and I'll face him later on in the show. So, yeah, looks like we've got the main event set up between Adam Rose and Tyson Kidd. Not a bad segment, but as I said, I'm just surprised that JoJo's doing interviews, because obviously WWE sees something in her, not many fans do. But obviously WWE sees something in her. You know, they didn't release her. There were a few releases this week, which I'll get to later on. But she wasn't one of the people that were released, so I'm guessing they see something in her. And to be fair, I always like to see people succeed. So I hope that whatever it is they see in her, she can succeed at that, whatever it happens to be, whether it's in the ring, backstage, whatever she's doing. So fair play to her. She's got something there now. As I say, fingers crossed for her. We sort of skip next to the commentary team, and they announced that starting from next week we'll have a number one contenders tournament for the NXT tag team titles. And thank God they're doing something with it finally, because it's just, everybody knows my opinions on the Ascension, so I'm not going to go there, but at least now we're going to get some decent tag team matches. Well, we normally do get decent tag team matches aside from when the Ascension are wrestling, but now we've got something for those decent tag team matches to work towards, because it's all in vain, it seems. Like when you have a good tag team match, say you could have, I don't know, Dillinger and Jordan versus Cassidy and Enza, just two teams off the top of my head. You could have those two teams having a really good match, and what's the reward for it? There is no reward, because the division's dead and they're not putting it towards anything. But now they've got a tournament, so teams can actually advance, get to the final. And hey presto, you got yourself a title match. And I fucking hope that whoever wins that tournament wins the titles. I really do, because the Ascension bore the fuck out of me. But yeah, more on the Ascension later. Next match was Charlotte versus Becky Lynch. New music and a new sort of look for Becky Lynch. You know, she came out for her first match about a month or so ago, and she had all this fucking Irish jig and, you know, these typical Irish gimmicks that they keep doing. Like they did it with Hornswoggle, did it with Sheamus, and for 3 or 4 weeks they did it with Becky Lynch. Thank fuck they've not done that now. You know, they've swayed away from it, which is good. She's not wearing the long green trousers anymore. She's just wearing like a typical women's wrestlers, you know, like top and bottoms, I suppose you could call it. Like trunks, I suppose. It was a decent little match, to be fair. Charlotte won with a bow down to the Queen. It was probably only about a 4-minute match. But one thing I've noticed about both of them, and I don't know what sort of made me notice it, it was just they both, like when they're going to hit the ropes, this is both Charlotte and Becky Lynch. When they're going to hit the ropes, they sort of slow down, turn, hit the ropes, and then come back again. But whereas most people will just sort of pivot, these two slow down, sort of stop, jump, and pivot, hit the ropes, and then come back. It just seems like you're losing momentum hitting the ropes. Whereas, like, if you watch a guy like Chris Jericho, I mean, Chris Jericho has been wrestling for 25 years or whatever it is. What he'd do is he'd pivot just as he gets to the rope, and he'd come back. But these two, they just sort of seem to like slow down or stop, hit the rope, and come back. It just doesn't look sloppy necessarily. It's a different way of doing it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just looks different, and it just not necessarily a bad different, but it's just something I noticed and thought I'd mention it. Whether anybody pays any attention to it or not, that's up to you. Another JoJo interview now with Mojo fucking Rawley. I hate this fucking guy. JoJo says that says about Mojo looking for a partner for the tag team title tournament starting for next week. Mojo said he doesn't care who his partner is as long as they're hyped. And he said he could even have JoJo as his partner, and actually calls him Team Mojo JoJo. And I sat there cringing the whole time because I don't like Mojo on the mic, and that is just a fucking god awful team name. And isn't Mojo JoJo, wasn't he on the Powerpuff Girls? Wasn't he that monkey on the Powerpuff Girls? Not that I watch the Powerpuff Girls. Anyway, Bull Dempsey comes in and interrupts and says he's looking for a partner, and as much as it pains him to say it, he wants Mojo Rawley to be his partner because obviously things have done quite well in the tournament. Mojo's there, like, he's starting to get hyped. He wasn't starting to get hyped, he was hyped, he was even more hyped. And Bull basically tells him, shut up. Well, he didn't tell him, I can't remember how he worded it now, but he just sort of said, look, if you fuck this up, I'm going to unleash a wrath upon you like I've never released on anyone in NXT. And Mojo's just like, his face just drops. I thought it was fucking brilliant. Bull's mic work was actually quite good here because he didn't sort of go over the top with it like Mojo was. He played it to the situation of a backstage interview where he's just like, we're backstage, there's no need to raise my voice, there's no need to get loud and shouty. Perfect. Well done, Bull Dempsey. About the only fucking thing you've done right. Now on to the Ascension. Their match versus Steve Cutler and Mac Miles. Steve Cutler is this former Marine, debuted a few weeks ago. Mac Miles, well, first and only match on TV because he got released. But I'll get to the releases as I said later on. Same old shit, no further comment. That's all I've got to say on that because I'm fucking fed up with it. Next was Mojo fucking Rawley and Bullshit Dempsey versus Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. They're known as the Mechanics. Dash Wilder is his debut and it's Scott Dawson's first match for something like 7 months, I think they said on commentary, since he broke a leg earlier in the year. Quick match, which Bull and Mojo picked up the win. Bull Dempsey at the bulldozer, like that sort of side body slam that he hits. I've said it till I'm blue in the face. I don't like either of these guys, but I'm actually interested to see what they do because weirdly enough, they had some good chemistry as a team. Bull took a tag. Mojo tagged himself in. Bull didn't like it, but then when Bull tagged himself in towards the end of the match, Mojo just sort of like carried on wrestling, and it was almost as though, obviously, if you're talking kayfabe, they know what they're doing, but if you're talking in the ring to the casual fan, they don't know what they're doing. To the extent of that, it's not planned that they're going to have this good chemistry, but the good chemistry was there. And Bull tagged himself in. Mojo hit the running splash into the corner I think it was on Dash Wilder, who sort of stumbled into the bulldozer, bam, 1, 2, 3, and they picked up the win. And they sort of celebrated together after the match, but not overly. It was just like, it was two individual celebrations rather than a team celebration, but still kind of together, if that makes sense. But I'm interested to see what they do because they did look half decent. So if they do sort of go far in this tournament and they keep them together as a team, I'm quite interested to see what they do with that. Another backstage interview, this time it was Rich Brennan. He was interviewing Bayley, and Rich, he asked her opinion on the BFF splitting up, and Bayley said, well, I'm glad they've split up because they were mean to me. I don't like this child gimmick still that Bayley's still portraying, it's gotten old really quickly, got old about a year ago. But it hasn't moved on. It hasn't developed, aside from the fact that she's not that like socially awkward anymore. It's just, I just don't like the gimmick. Bayley's a good wrestler, but I just fucking can't stand the gimmick. Really don't like it at all. Bayley talks about wanting a title match. She's interrupted by Charlotte, and Charlotte basically said, "You don't want a title match because you've got no chance of winning." So. Not really too keen on Charlotte on the mic, if I'm honest. I never really have been. She's improved a lot in the ring. She has improved a lot in the ring, but she's got a lot of mic work to work on still, or a lot of mic work to sort of build on still. Rather, she's not the best, but she's improved in the ring, so she got time to improve on the mic as well. In all fairness to her. Main event time. Tyson Kidd versus Adam Rose. It was a decent match, to be fair. It was like 10-12 minute match. I really enjoyed it. the funny part at the beginning of the match was Adam Rose. He sort of ran to the outside of the ring and he took a lollipop out from his trousers, wrestling trousers, and he gave it to Natalya, and she accepted it. And when she sort of put it in her mouth, the crowd just went ballistic, like popped really loudly. They thought it was brilliant. And Natalya actually got quite embarrassed that she put Adam Rose's lollipop in her mouth. Yes, that's me making a dirty comment. Kid then ran to the outside of the ring, took the lollipop off her, sort of slammed it down onto the corner of the ring. So it's like on the mat in the corner next to the ring post. He slammed it down. The whole crowd just chanted, "Party pooper." It was brilliant. You know, whenever Adam Rose is around, the crowd really comes alive in NXT. And it's a shame it's not happened like that on the main roster, as I've said before, because he's just got a real charisma about him. Not many people actually possess that. And it's just a shame that the character hasn't caught on Raw and on SmackDown and on pay-per-views, and Superstars, main event, whatever shows he's been on. But I'd love to just keep him down in NXT because the crowd still love him down there. And so it was a decent match. It came to an end when Tyson was on the outside of the ring, Adam Rose was down in the ring, and Tyson picked up the lollipop that I was talking about just now. And I thought he was just going to sort of take it into the ring, hold it up in Rose's face and start trash talking with her, like, "What are you doing with the lollipop?" kind of thing, you know, kind of shitty heel, trying to get heat kind of thing. But Rose just sort of caught him with an inside cradle, 1, 2, 3, rolled him up. Rose picked up the win. And after the match, Natalya tried to console Tyson, but he wasn't having any of it. He blew her off and just sort of had his arms and head draped over the ropes as the show went off. The crowd were chanting something, but I couldn't make out what it was because you heard literally 2 chants of it. That was it. It was a bit of a... It was a weird way to end the show, really. Like, normally you'd see people like disappointed and walking up the ramp or something, but it was a weird way to end it in that way. Overall, though, I really enjoyed the show. I've given it a 7 out of 10. You know, we got the tag team tournament next week. You know, there was a decent main event between Tyson Kidd and Adam Rose. Charlotte and Becky Lynch was a decent match after last week's absolutely shocking women's match. I said at the time I fucking hated it. Good to see new backstage interviewer as well, JoJo. You know, they're actually giving her something to do now. Rich Brennan did a good job in his little interview that he had. But the only blemish really on the show was the Ascension just doing the same old Ascension shit, which is boring as fuck. And I've been talking to a couple of people about it on Twitter before I started recording. They agree with me. I just can't see how anybody can get behind the Ascension. If you do, just pop me a tweet over at Axel Mulligan. Let me know why you do, because I'd love to know a reason why people can get behind them. I really would. Next week on the show, as I said, we've got to start the tag team title tournament. And there was a really good promo video, actually, for a rematch between Xavier Woods and CJ Parker. I'm looking forward to it because, you know, Xavier's starting to make a few waves now on the main roster with this Nation of Domination 2.0 he's forming. And, you know, I don't mind him in the ring. He's a good talker as well. And CJ's come on leaps and bounds in the last 2 or 3 months. He really has. You know, especially on the mic. He's just gone to a whole new level for him. And, you know, I'm looking forward to it, see what they do with it. I'm hoping that Xavier is going to win, and then that at the next live show they'll have the rubber match. It just sort of keeps the fan interested. Then I find I'll still be interested in it by then, assuming that they can keep some decent promos going. NXT news this week. I've just got about the releases that we were talking about earlier. Garrett Dillon, Travis Tyler, Slate Randall, Mac Miles, and Danny Jackson. Never heard of Danny Jackson, so I don't know who the hell that is. Well, I don't know whether that's a bloke. I don't know whether that's a woman. I have no fucking idea, so don't ask me on that. Garrett Dillon doesn't surprise me because he's fucking awful. He got released once before and then he was like sort of silently rehired. But he's the son of Chris Christopherson. His real name's Jody Christopherson. But I'm not too fussed about that. Travis Tyler, saw him job to the Ascension a few times, so yeah, whatever. Slate Randall, they were actually quite big on him. He was supposed to be debuting fairly soon, but for whatever reason they've decided to let him go. what the reasons were is obviously for the budget cuts, but obviously they would have needed a reason to release certain individuals. So I don't know why they would have released him after sort of hyping him so, or not hyping him, but sort of being so big on him at one point and then just completely going off of him. But hey, this is the WWE we're talking about. This is what they do. And Vince McMahon will do as he fucking well pleases. And lastly, Matt Miles, as I said, wrestled his first and last show on NXT this week. He just basically got destroyed by the Ascension, like everybody else does. Anyway, on to the birthdays. July the 28th would have been the 81st birthday of Captain Lou Albano. July the 29th was the birthday of Scott Steiner, he turned 52. July the 31st, John Laurinaitis, 52 as well, and Kid Cash, 45. August 1st, Devon Dudley, 42, and Harry D.H. Smith, son of the British Bulldog, 29. Today, August the 2nd, Jim Neidhart, 58. August the 3rd, Damien Sandow, and I've added a new section for this week at least. I might carry it on next week, I don't know, it depends what sort of ideas I get going through my head, and I got it from reading that it was the birthday of Tom Jenkins. He was born in 1872, so 142 years old, obviously he's dead by now. But I knew as much about Tom Jenkins as the fact that he wrestled in the first ever World Heavyweight Championship match back in 1905 against George Hackenschmidt. And what I've done is I've done a little bit of research, and instead of having this week in WWE history, I'm going to do a small piece on Tom Jenkins, like with the build up of his World Championship match, a little bit about his career. Basically, he was American Heavyweight Champion when he lost to George Hackenschmidt in 1905. Hackenschmidt held 2 European Championships at the time. This is catch as catch can wrestling. And when he won his match with Jenkins, he won it by 2 falls to none. All matches, all at least title matches, to the best of my knowledge, back in those days, were best 2 out of 3 falls. The first fall ended in 31 minutes. And the second one was in 22 minutes. He's recognised as the first ever world champion. This is George Hackenschmidt. And his other titles, the American title, that he held, the American heavyweight title, and his 2 European championships were declared vacant. Jenkins, he was the 3-time American heavyweight champion. That was the highest he ever got in wrestling. Never managed to win the world championship. He retired in 1914. Well, he semi-retired in 1905 after his loss to Hackenschmidt, but he officially retired in 1914. But in 1905, when he semi-retired, he was asked by President Theodore Roosevelt if he would coach wrestling and boxing at the U.S. Military Academy. And he served as a coach for 37 years, from 1905 to 1942. And he even went on to play professional football for Buffalo in sort of into his 50s. He passed away in 1957 at the age of 84, and he was inducted into 3 Hall of Fames. The first one was in 1996. That was the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. The George Tragos and Lou Fez Hall of Fame in 2006, and then the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2008. As I said, it's just something I was thinking of because I knew a little bit about Tom Jenkins, just because I'm a wrestling nerd, basically. I knew a little bit about him, and I was sort of quite interested to learn a little bit more. And I thought, well, it's something maybe that I could implement into the show. You know, there are other people that do a This Week in Wrestling History, so maybe if I just sort of change that up, just give me your thoughts, what you think. Anyone who listens, if you'd rather I did this or did This Week in Wrestling History, I'd only want to do one of the two. I don't really want to do both because it just overclutters the show. But I thought this was a nice, interesting little piece to do. Just sort of give people a background on like the early days of wrestling, like 1905, George Hackenschmidt versus Tom Jenkins. And it's a match that, if it was available on video, I'd be all over it like that, because it's a story that I've heard so many times, but I love hearing about it. But yeah, no, if anyone's got any opinions on, you know, this little piece that I've done here, or whether you prefer This Week in WWE History, just let me know. Send me a tweet at Axel Mulligan. That's the end of this week's show. As always, make sure you look for me on Twitter at Axel Mulligan. look out for the Facebook page. If you search Axel's Analysis on Facebook, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Podomatic and Mixcloud. I didn't put it on Mixcloud last week. I had a bit of a busy weekend and I didn't even send it out to people like I normally do. So I had about 10 hits altogether. So you pay the price when you don't have the time, unfortunately. On to the shout-outs now. As always, make sure you check out Tim Vicious on Twitter. You can find both of his accounts at Tim Vicious and at Tim_Vicious. And make sure you look out for his YouTube show, Vicious Rants. As I said before, he covers Raws and pay-per-views. Does a really good job. All around good guy as well, Tim, to be fair. Make sure you look out for as well Sunday Segway podcast. Big shout out to Kinney and his partner. She gave birth this morning. I was chatting to Kinney about it last week when we had the first Sunday Segway meetup. And I know just how much he was looking forward to the birth of their second child. So congratulations to both of you. I'm really pleased for you. And yeah, congratulations. You can find the Sunday Segway podcast on YouTube. You can find it on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher Radio. I think there's one or two other places as well. I can never remember. I always mean to ask Kinney and I always forget. So I'll try and remember to ask him. James Paris 33 at James Paris 33. You can find James's Wrestling Rambles on YouTube, Podomatic, and Mixcloud. At PW Smart Talk, at Wrestling Rambles. Make sure you check out WrestlingRambles.com for some fantastic blogs. Also check out Tony_Walker and his podcast is the Wrestling Matters podcast. You can find that on YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic. I think he's on Mixcloud and Stitcher Radio as well. So make sure you check him out. And any of the ones, Sunday Segway and the Wrestling Matters podcast, if you listen to them on iTunes, make sure you give them a rating just to, get them up the iTunes charts. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. As I said just now, if you've got any opinions on the new feature that I've done this week, if you prefer that to the This Week in WWE History, let me know and I'll try and integrate that into the show instead of the This Week in WWE History. Just trying to mix it up a bit because I know there's other podcasts that do a This Week in History or This Day in History or whatever. So it's something that I was just sort of thinking of, as I said, when I was I noticed it was the birthday of Tom Jenkins, and I just thought it was a really interesting thing to add to the show. So whatever your opinions, let me know. Any opinions on the show, as I said as well, you can find me on Twitter at Axel Mulligan. Thanks for listening to the show as always, guys, and I'll see you again next week.